Welcome to our first episode of the Kaleidoscope. I am Shirelle Zachery. I am here with my fantastic guest, Chantel Seymore. Today's topic is the mirror and the mantle. How do we make or break leaders?
Well, thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. And the first, no pressure, right?
No pressure.
I'm really glad that we're talking just in full transparency.
Yes.
I mean, I know we don't have a red table or anything like that, but we have truth going.
Yeah. So, Chantel, you and I have had this conversation multiple times because we talk about leadership more often than we probably care to. So let's just ask the question at the front end.
Yeah.
What makes a leader effective and what makes a leader ineffective?
Okay. You know, when I think about a leader in effectiveness, vulnerability just pops into my brain each and every time. I have been asked this question over the course of my experience for at least 20 plus years. And always vulnerability and no ego.
Yes.
When I think of an effective leader, this person allows himself to continuously grow each and every day.
Yep.
They want and know the best for their team, and they're open to being agile to whatever win it takes. Because, you know, there's change that goes on in leadership, right?
Right.
And that leader is being able to take that team along with them and just go through the currency of all the tides that come with it.
Right.
And minimizing that ego and understanding it is about that team, about our goal and our direction of where we want to go.
Right. So the opposite of that.
Is in totally being that leader in that boat in that tide, putting the water on the boat, drowning the team members, you know, and on and on and on, and having an ego flare up, right?
Yeah.
And not giving space for mistakes to be made and allowing disarray.
Well, the psychological safety, right? Because they don't have the confidence that they can make a mistake without the ridicule and the pushback. They don't believe that there's accountability or ownership of the situation. There's theft of ideas and work.
Yes.
There is dismissal of contributions.
Yes.
And so how do you turn that around? I mean, I've said it, you said it, that when we have these ineffective leaders, generally I'm like, how do we tell them that they're ineffective?
Well, first they have to want to hear it, right?
Okay, fair.
You have to want to hear it because sometimes we've seen ineffective leaders, but they've gotten some results, at least on the outer appearance of results. And we will be like, well, that person did this and that and sort of led like a tyrant.
Right.
But the results were there because we live in a world of what?
Yeah.
Results.
Yeah.
But an effective leader knows that you may only have a result for a little bit of time or maybe no result at all, but it's not long-term and sustainable. And I think that's the real conversation to be had to, number one, listen and understand that there's some continuous improvement and learning that has to happen to be a totally effective and impactful leader, at least one that is sustainable. And you have to have a real truth conversation. You know, we talk about the person in the mirror.
Right.
I won't say the man in the mirror, the person in the mirror.
Correct, right.
And knowing what are you reflecting back? What type of leader am I? You know, one thing that I always want to know, how am I leading? I want to know it from my people.
Yep.
How am I landing?
I told somebody, and this was an advice that I had gotten, the best thing that I've ever done as a leader is I asked my team, how am I leading?
How am I?
How am I as a leader? Yes. And so one of the things that I asked my team is I was like, give me 3 things that I do very well.
Yes.
And give me 3 to 5 things that I don't do well that I need to improve upon. That takes courage.
Yes, it does take courage.
It takes courage, but you also have to be confident that they're not going to tell me something that's untrue. Because they want success as just as much as I want success.
Correct.
Right?
And I have to pick a plug there. You know, one of the things is when you get that feedback, don't start walking back.
Oh, absolutely not.
well, it's because and it's this and it's that. And, we just start sort of building these defense mechanisms around the feedback that we're hearing and not understanding it's feedback. Feedback is a gift. I know it sounds corny.
No, it is a gift.
But it is a true gift, whether it be a beautiful Tiffany box gift or it be something that, you have to just really work with.
Part of it is that, and I'm not going to get into the social work side of it. Part of it is they don't want to do the work.
Oh, wow. Well,
do they want to really do the work?
Because
it takes work, right?
It's work, yeah.
If you want to get better, if you want to be on the other side of it, it takes the self-awareness.
Yes.
It takes the vulnerability.
Yes.
It takes the humility.
Yes.
And it does away with the ego. Right.
It does. And it's a self-regulation of the feelings.
Card, though,
yes.
If that's your calling card.
Yeah.
And that's what you've been celebrated because you've gotten the results.
Correct.
How do you take that back?
And you have to understand, though, it's a result. The result is there, but at what cost?
Absolutely.
Right? You have all of this carnage behind you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The casualties of war.
Yeah. Right? But it's a result.
Right.
And it's just not impactful, man. It's just it's so disheartening when we are not checking ourselves as leaders to identify. Because I can tell you now, and this is just real talk, right? Mm-hmm. The leader that I am today is not the leader I probably was, I would say, even last year.
Oh, absolutely not.
If I think about it, maybe a month ago.
Well, you're constantly changing,
you're
right?
Changing.
You're changing and you're evolving. I was just telling my students this just yesterday. I told them that if you're going to be an effective leader, it requires you to change every day.
Every day.
It requires you to evaluate, reflect, be attentive, and not be the person that wants to be in denial or ignore. Mm-hmm. And because it's going to make you better. Yeah. And then I always say, too, that mistake is only a mistake if you repeat it. Mm-hmm. If there's, quote unquote, a failure, it's an opportunity to learn. If you learn from it, it's an experience.
That's it. I love that it's an experience, because truly it is an experience. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I'm talking about as, I'm not the leader that I was last month or last year. It's because, again, that evolvement that's happening and the gradual change that's happening with me personally and professionally, and the experiences that I'm allowing to happen and grow from. Yep. Knowing my emotional triggers have changed.
Mm-hmm. And your emotional maturity has increased.
That's it.
And so I was just telling the same students the same thing, that when I took the DISC assessment 7 years ago, 8 years ago, it said one thing. Yeah. When life starts to happen, or when you evolve in your leadership and you become more responsible, more in tune, your DISC assessment could change. Absolutely. Or any assessment for that matter can change. Yeah. Because there's evolution, there's transformation, there's change that has happened, but it's change for the better, not for the worse.
Correct. Evolution and transformation better happen, right? Exactly. And I have to say this, I got to plug this because life be lifing. It be lifing.
Yeah. And you can't be the emotional leader, though.
Correct.
You have
Even when life is lifing, to understand that self-regulation, because that's one of the biggest parts of emotional intelligence. Absolutely. Is being able to regulate those emotions even in the chaos of life.
Yep. Yeah. One of the things, so have you had this experience? Have you had an experience where you had a leader, whether directly reported to or by afar, somebody else, and you just want to shake them and do you get it?
Woo. Yes.
And the thing of it is that you want them to be better, but you want them to be better for themselves and not necessarily for you. But you can't force them to want something better or more for them than they want for themselves.
Well, of course, I'm not saying names on this.
We are protecting the innocent.
We are protecting the innocent today. When I think about the shake, it's because I want to shake and say, do you know the influence and power you have? And how you are wavering this influence and power in such a way that is setting all of us back. But the level of influence that you have could set, if done right, could set us forward.
Yes.
And I think that's when you know if you have a visionary leader or not.
Or even a servant leader. So why don't we want to be a servant leader?
Because, like you said earlier, and I'm not going to speak for everyone. I know somebody's out there that's saying, she's not talking about me. Right. I do think it's simply because it goes back to it has worked most of the time or some of the time. So why bother?
Right. So then that takes me to another question. Who's responsible for that? Is it the board of directors? Is it the CEO, COO? Is it
all around when we don't have the truth conversations that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Right? And the truth, it can happen in a beautiful way to have that crucial conversation with that peer or that the leader or even the person that reports to you. I have a friend who tells me all the time, it started from somewhere. There's always a starting point. There's always a starting point. And it's so funny because in my personal relationship with my husband, he can be a little passive more than I am. I'm like, let's get let's cut this off in the head, and he's always saying, you're ready to always go after it. It's because I think that I've seen so many times things have not been addressed.
Yes.
Even at a higher level of what we're speaking about.
Yeah.
And the impact it has on people's productivity, their bottom line, their teams,
the culture,
all of it, right?
The turnover.
Yes. So there's times we don't catch it when we see it and we're, because we don't want to deal with it.
Well,
I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to be that person.
My words to every leader that I've ever had to coach is avoidance is not a leadership style.
It's not. It's compliance. Don't you think?
Yeah. It's avoidance because it's hard.
Yeah. But silence, I'm saying, to me,
okay. I get what
the
you're
silence,
saying.
avoiding the issue is becoming, to me, not addressing it. And that leads to silence. And that almost means I'm compliant with this behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I always say, too, is that if you don't say anything, you're incompliant.
That's right.
And you're fostering and you're writing the blank check for them.
Yes.
That you've given them the permission to say that this is okay because you're not addressing it. And just because, going back to what you said earlier, is just because I'm giving you results does not mean I'm effective.
That's right. It doesn't mean that.
Because there can be chaos.
Yes.
And beauty on the other side. Yeah. But that beauty can also, because everybody that you're working with on your team has a work ethic, that they're disciplined, they're focused, they're committed.
Yeah.
In spite of,
right? And then you wonder, like, when you start to see the results doing this, right? That's some of that's happening sometimes in there. If you start to peel it back and really look at it.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask another question.
Yeah.
What are the essentials? We've talked around and about, but let's give the audience some definitives.
The nugget, yeah.
Right? What are some essential or required core competencies for any leader? And can they be learned or are they innate?
Ooh. Okay, so I sort of want to take it back a little backward, the learned or innate deal. That's a whole subject. We talk about that all the time. I believe, this is just Chantel, okay?
Right.
And from all the years of just dealing with people and coaching and understanding, there are a lot of things that can be learned.
Okay.
And there are some things that are so impactful that it's almost like this person has gotten it young. Like it's a part of their DNA all but.
Right.
Yeah, almost like a drive. You know how you can see some people, whether young or old, they have this internal drive and intuition.
Yeah.
And some may not have it as much, but they're willing to
do the work
and learn some of it.
Well,
so there's a balance to that, I think.
Yeah. And so I would say go back to what you said earlier is the vulnerability, the humility, the self-awareness.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about emotional intelligence, but I don't think we define it enough to give them tasks, responsibilities, and learning goals to reach that.
Yes. And I don't want to throw us off too much course. So I'll go back to your original question. What are those? What's that recipe? You know, I'm from New Orleans.
Right.
And so I don't have the written down recipe for gumbo, but I know there's some essential things that have to be in my gumbo, right? So just as the same as a leadership, I believe in. One of the big things we've danced it and we've talked about it over and over again. If we could take three things, I would say, number one would absolutely be having a depth of self-awareness. It has to.
Yeah.
And I mean taking that real hard look at who you are. I do it all the time. And I have to tell you, Shirelle, sometimes I'm like, oh
yeah.
Right?
You leave a meeting, you like, yeah.
Did I say it like, should I not say it like that?
A little bit differently. I'm going to interject. So let's just take this. When you're listening to the Kaleidoscope podcast, just know we're going to deviate. So I'm going to deviate for just 1 second.
Yes.
Do we also have that thought because of somebody else's reaction, not necessarily because we did something incorrectly? Now, I'm going to just say this truth. You have women leaders, and we're in the room, and there is a self-inflicted how I show up or how I need to show up.
Yes.
But I can also regress because it makes other people confident and comfortable.
Yes, of course. What's the book? See Jane Lead? That's one of my favorite books. It talks about, women as leaders and how, we know it, and you and I talk about this all the time, where I won't apply for the position because I don't have every 25 bulletproof down.
Right.
There's something in me lacking to apply. But my male counterpart would be like, I could wing 24 of them. I know the one real good, and they apply. And, it's something about, I'll speak for me as a woman. I don't want to speak for all the women out there by no means, but me as a woman, I know that I have dimmed my light at times when and I have a seat at the table. I have a seat at the table, but I'm not psychologically safe to speak up. And I'm, as a Black woman, there are times I can remember I told a colleague, I said, hey, next time this happens with a person, would you mind letting me know about it first? And I'm telling you, I've been doing this quite a while, so I'm very cognitive on how I land on others. I'm not telling you I don't make any mistakes, because I do. But in this particular instance, I was speaking to another woman, and I was saying, hey, just next time, let me know so I can be able to cushion it for this person and they can understand it better.
Right.
So I have a meeting with my leader, and they're like, hey, I heard about that incident. I heard you were angry about that. And I was like taken back. And when I'm taken back, I do this chuckle. I go, now I'm sure people watching this and I lead them, they're going to be looking for the chuckle now.
Right. Like,
did she just chuckle?
Exactly.
But I did the chuckle, and I was taken back because I was like, wow, I know for a fact that I tried to land in a good space with this individual, just because of who I am. And another woman saw that as exuberant of my behavior. And even my VP at the time stated, I've never seen you angry. I was taken back by the comment. I said, well, I'm taken back by the comment as well. Yes. Because, I this is what I said, and I know my tone. I do. I really, really do, right?
Yeah.
And so I say that to say that even with each other, we sometimes have to even subdue ourselves in that instance, because we have this personification of whatever, right, as a woman.
And I think, and this is a Shirelle-ism, I also think that as a woman, I think our compassion and sensitivity shines a little bit brighter.
Oh, my word, yes.
Because we understand that. Right?
Yeah.
So my compassion, my empathy, my understanding, my grace, my forgiveness.
All of that. Because I did the grace and forgiveness of that. And of course I did the reflection.
Correct.
Right? I went back and said, okay, let me see how I could have done this differently. And I remember calling a counterpart, stating that, wow, this is, bothering me here because I know. And it was so funny because later on, like a week later or something, I had to do something with this individual. And they told me that they were going through something personal and maybe they were, and I didn't bring it up. They brought it up,
because here's a compliment to that person. There was some self-reflection.
There was some self-reflection as well, right?
Yeah.
But going back to the nugget you were talking about. So I said self-awareness is number one.
Yes.
Because, again, I think that's the leader of it all, to understand where you're coming from as a leader, whether we're talking about a man or a woman or however you identify. And number two, I think just having a level of empathy goes extremely a long way. So I'm a DDI instructor, and I teach a lot of communications for effective leadership. And one of the key principles we talk about is empathy. And I can see all the time how leaders score low in that area. Right?
Because it's about them most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, it's, it's because and I'll hear leaders say, well, I mean, we give them a check.
Right.
I hear leaders say that.
Oh.
They get a bonus for this.
I've heard them say they get a paycheck at the end of the week.
Yeah.
And I'm
What's
like,
the problem? Yeah.
But
yeah,
what is your contribution?
Yeah. Just get over it.
Yeah. One of the things I've told this to a lot of people in the past, because it's a stat that's out there, it's not a Shirelle stat, is that 100% of people join an organization and 80% of them leave the manager. And they're like, really?
They do leave the person, not the job.
Because you are the face of the organization.
That's right. That's right.
They don't necessarily know who the CEO is. They don't necessarily know who the CFO is. They don't necessarily know who the general counsel is.
Correct.
And they definitely don't know who the board of directors are. So they only know you.
Correct.
So you're the representation.
You're the representative. Yes. Like it or not.
That is your role. And I always tell leaders too, you're a parent. You don't get to turn it off. You don't get to say, oh, never mind, not today.
Yeah.
When you sign up and say you want that title and want that paycheck, it comes with it.
It's so funny. I help out some friends and colleagues with their mentorship program a lot. And often the mentees will come in and say, I want to be a leader. I want to be a manager. I want to be. And I say this all the time in my classes. I often ask, why? Do you know it's a lot to lead people? Not boss people, but lead people, right? It's a lot.
It is a lot.
And it's different personalities. And I often tell people you have to be careful of taking that paintbrush, dipping in that red paint, and painting everyone the same.
You can't.
You can't.
You can't. Well, that's the beauty of leadership, in my opinion. That's one of the reasons why I love it, is because I get to navigate, I get to build skills because I have different people on my team, right? Everybody on my team is not the same, which means that I have to manage you very differently than I manage this person.
Right.
It's just like having multiple children, right? That every child that you have, yes, you birthed that child, but you did not have the exact same child.
That is correct. I mean, I tell the story all the time, and I think my sister is amazing, but her and I are extremely different, and we had some same things happening, right? We grew up in the same home, we have the same parents, but even in that breath, we're so different. We even look a lot alike, right? She's the skinnier version of me, but we are so different in thought and process and all.
And approach.
Yes.
An approach.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So we talked about self-awareness, empathy. And if I would say one more, when I just think through I'm thinking about all the amazing leaders I know. And I think it's this ability to have a level of agility. And I do know that agility is one of those buzzwords out here today, but it's such a meaningful and impactful word. Because when I think of agility and flexibility of what that looks like, I'm thinking about a body of water and a current, and how you just have to sort of flow and, go with it sometimes. Sometimes there's no plan. You have to go with it.
Sometimes it is. And that's the part about leadership too, right?
Yes.
Is because sometimes you have to make decisions. You have to be in the thrust of the change. And you have to help navigate that change, right?
Yes.
Even if you don't agree with it.
It's
still your responsibility to navigate that. And it's also your responsibility to make sure your team feels safe through that change.
Yes.
Right? And what does that change really mean to them? And not only think about it from your lens.
Yes.
If you got 7 people, 8 people, 15 people, it's 15 different lenses.
It is.
That change is. And so going back to the other term is you can't be that emotional leader. You have to be the leader that actually can move that current or move along with the current.
Correct.
And even when the ripples come, you should still be able to stay the course.
Correct. And knowing when there's times where you have to tell your team, we got to exit right here.
Right.
This is the exit because it's about to do a downturn. Right. Definitely.
And not put the onus on somebody else.
No. It's so funny you would say that part. And I hope I wrote it down so I would not forget. Forget it. I hope I wrote it right too. Oh, where is it? It says that ineffective leaders... Oh, no, the real mirror of a leader is not the title. It's the reflection back to someone who is truly trustworthy. Ooh. And I wrote that down on purpose, and I saw it, and I was like, this is so true, right? Because even when we're talking about that river and that flow, I mean, that team has to trust you.
Trust.
Big time. I mean, we can talk about, self-awareness, having empathy, but you have to make sure that you're building trust within all those mechanisms of that team for when it gets a little shady. Sometimes it's getting shady. You have to know that team knows I have your best efforts in mind here.
Right. Now, I'm going to digress for just a second because you said something that always rings for me is the trust thing. A lot of times we misrepresent our belief system that our team trusts us, right? Because they're still doing the work every day and they're still, coming to me with questions and they're dependent upon me for guidance and direction and counsel, but there is no trust there. And when there is no trust, you're really not following them. You're following your own commitment, ethic, work ethic, or your own goals.
Yeah.
So how do you tell a manager that you don't trust him or her?
And I know this may sound a little bizarre as I say it for some, but first you have to talk about why there's a lack of trust.
Correct.
It doesn't come up. So let's say, hey, when you canceled this meeting or you didn't acknowledge me in my work or you took
credit.
You may have taken the credit. Help me understand that because I'm feeling
a little taken back by
this. And it's starting to impact our trust.
Yes.
So I always say talk about what's happening that impacts the trust. Nah, I don't trust you.
No,
right?
But you have to define it, right?
So you're talking about the stuff that happened
that caused the trust.
And eroded the trust.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, though. We don't say it.
You have to.
We have to say it because what I tell my students is that if you have an issue with me and you go to your fellow classmate, is your fellow classmate going to be able to fix it?
Right.
Probably not. So if you don't come to me and you don't tell me what the issue is, I can't fix the issue.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you to have the courage.
Yes.
And trust that if you come to me, I'm going to take ownership of what you've explained.
Yes.
And if there is an exchange, I'm going to respect your lens. I'm going to respect mine. And we're going to come to some conclusion. But at the end of the day, I have to know that I've created an environment where you trust that you can come to me.
Yes. And, I'm thinking about the leader who would be offended and not see the opportunity. And I'm saying this in hopes that if you're a leader growing and you're taken back even by the person saying that the trust is eroded, whether it be a miscommunication or something that really happened, always utilize it as an opportunity, leader. This is an opportunity. This is courage.
Yeah.
To come and do this and say this, whether you agree with it or not. That's not what it's about. It's about understanding that person had the courage to come and say that and use this as an opportunity to help grow the situation, you, that person, what have you.
And I think that's the key, right? Because a lot of times it's always about you.
No.
It's always, it can be about the other person, right?
Yes.
Because what about if throughout my career, I've felt taken advantage of, or I've felt dismissed or undervalued, and I'm trying to get to a place where I've been coached and mentored and say, hey, Shirelle, you really need to show up in this space and you need to do X, Y, and Z. And now I'm exercising that strategy or that approach.
Yeah.
And you take it as if I am denouncing your authority or your position, when really it was about me having the courage to speak up for myself.
Exactly, right? And I know that there's some, we call them blind spots as leaders that, we may have and that we don't see on the other person as well, because we all come from this stuff, right? We all come from experiences and all of the stuff that we bring to the table. And we can be holding something that we just can't see. Right? And it's not really in the back of us and we haven't dealt with it. And now it's in front of us to deal with. Trust is a huge thing for me. And I know what it feels like to be in an environment where there's none. And I also know what it's like to be in an environment where there is.
Right.
And those are two different worlds.
And they're two different emotional experiences.
Oh, yes.
So that's my takeaway always. The good leaders versus the ineffective leaders. And I'm like, how did I feel in that environment? Did I feel valued? Did I feel heard? Did I feel appreciated? Did I feel like I was truly contributing? Did I feel like my skill set was of value? Right? And I knew how I felt. So when I set my team up, I set them up the exact same way, right? Because I know what that looks like. And then on the opposite side, I know what it looks like when it's unhealthy and toxic and very, bully, environment. And I would never want to do that. Now, here's the saying, well, maybe you're too soft and I guarantee you I get results.
Yes. Yeah.
So the softness is not a downplay, or the servant leadership.
No, it's
not.
It's
not a downplay.
It's not.
Right? It is a strength. It is a superpower.
It is utilized effectively and correctly. It is a superpower.
Correct.
Yes. I think that when we embrace the commitment and being kind to people, and understanding that we're dealing with people. I think it's Stephen Covey that says that people bring their hearts to the organization, to anything you do. People, humanistically, we bring our hearts. I have a kid who loves robots and everything, and automation and all of that. She loves that. But I often talk to her about still building relationships with people.
Not just those robots.
Not just the robots. Because people in relationship building and how they show up, you have to understand that and have that softness.
Right.
To some extent, whether it just be a level of empathy, a level to hear and understand.
Right.
And again, a level to just be kind.
Being kind, because to me, again, I'm not the only leader. There's 1,000 of us out there, right? But we also know that the kindness has been results driven, right? Because I'm kind, I'm thoughtful. And so one of my mentors told me this a long, long time ago. She said, Shirelle, If you respect them, they'll respect you, and they'll do anything you need them to do because you've done it for them.
That's right.
And I was like, huh? And she was like, watch it. And when I tell you throughout my leadership career, when I have had the empathy and the compassion, when I say, hey, we have this big whatever to do, this big project to do, and I really need somebody to stay a little bit over, or I need somebody to add a little bit more time here. It's like, oh, Shirelle, we got you.
Yeah. Yes.
Don't worry about it.
Yes. I talk about my mentor all the time, Deb Soul. I mean, that was a recipe of who she is and part of her DNA. Mm-hmm. And I could remember being 9 months pregnant, and we had to deliver on something. I was right there making sure we bring that home for her because she was that leader.
Exactly.
Right?
You never wanted them to fall.
No.
And if you do have a leader that you don't trust, you don't care if they fall or not.
It's real. That's real.
Why am I going to save you? You don't save me.
You don't save me.
And
people think like that.
They do. And
some people, not all
people,
but enough people do.
It goes back to what my parents used to say. This is not a tit for tat type of thing, right? However,
I've seen it. I've seen it in all levels of relationships.
Yeah.
All levels.
Yeah.
Whether we're talking about personal or professional. There is a tit-for-tat mechanism that can absolutely be in play, and leaders, your people are watching you.
Yes, and they are. And so I'm going to add to that tit-for-tat. We've all had the experience of confidence. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think I alluded to it earlier. Mm-hmm. One of my students just asked me this question, and I'm going to ask it of you.
Okay.
If you had someone that didn't like you, tell me why they wouldn't like you.
Oh, they probably would not like my boldness sometimes, right? Sometimes I'm like, this is what it is. Mm-hmm. This is my truth. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking in transparency. Mm-hmm. So if they're uncomfortable with that, right? It's so funny. My daughter is doing essay questions right now for college. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And, I was top 50 women of Austin. I'm a leader. I've been recognized for, I'm a mom, right?
Right.
And I was reading her essay, and there was some parts that was very, nice about me. Mm-hmm. And then there were some parts that said, She puts the pressure on. Mm-hmm. She can put the pressure on. Mm-hmm. And I also hear from my husband, too. Right. So I think that's another thing. I think my pressure, like I can put pressure.
Well.
As well.
And when she asked the question, I answered it and said confidence. And I said, your confidence can be very intimidating for other people. Because I am comfortable in my own skin, right? I'm comfortable with what I know, and I'm comfortable with what I don't know. And then on top of that, I'm comfortable letting you know that I got to go learn that, or I made a mistake.
Yeah.
And that can be very intimidating because people, let's just talk about the psychological side. If that's a trait that I don't have and wish I did, I could not like you for that. Not necessarily you, the person, but the characteristic or the trait.
Of course.
Right?
Because it's something that I'm deflecting away from. Mm-hmm. It could be something going on in that past that I don't know about, that I haven't dealt with personally, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It could be all of the above. I often say, you're not going to be 100% liked by anyone. Mm-hmm. I don't even... This is that, how we were talking about that emotional maturity and all that? In my 20s, I really wanted to be liked.
Oh, yeah.
Like me. If we had Facebook and TikTok and all that, I would be like, I got 1,000 friends and I got 550 likes or whatever. Mm-hmm. But who I am now, I just really need you to respect me.
That part. And respect what I bring to the table.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah. I say the same thing is that I show up in a way that's going to allow me to be proud of me at the end of the day. it doesn't mean that it's nothing against you.
Yes,
right?
Of course.
Show up your way.
Yeah.
I remember a former boss, I had gotten a new boss, and my former boss had told the new one thing you'll never have to worry about, Shirelle, is she's extremely reflective. And I was like, is that a compliment? And the reason I think that is because if I ever did something, I dissected it. Okay?
Yes.
I wasn't really emotionally mature in that moment. I didn't look at all the details in that moment, or I was rushing, whatever the case may be, and I dissected.
Yeah.
And I learned from it. But I also went to her and said, hey, let me just give you a confession. You probably might, if you do get a call, let me tell you what you're going to get a call about. Or you may not get a call, but I don't want to catch you off guard, right? And the reason I did that is because it was self-improvement for me, right? And I can't be a leader and expect my team to follow me if I can't be that truthful, right?
Yeah, of course. Because you can say a lot of things to a lot of people, but you better tell yourself the truth. Right?
If I'm insecure, though, how do I tell myself that?
Well, you're not. I don't know what you're saying.
And
but it's possibly not the truth.
That's where the shaking comes in to me. You know, I'm like, you know that you're insecure. It bleeds. It's like a flare.
But again, remember we said self-awareness, empathy, and the third one, agility, right? And I'm telling you that self-awareness is a huge, huge deal.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that, you know, even as I think about who I am today, sitting here, and the things that, you know, the faux pas that I've done or the misses that I've done. I mean, there is self-awareness big time as I reflect upon that and owning that out loud.
Yeah.
So I can tell myself the truth. I really want to make sure I always tell myself the truth.
And I think the truth, going back to what your grandparents used to say, the truth will set you free.
Woo!
And I do think, and I thank you for saying it, because it is exactly what you said a moment ago, is that it is not a bad thing. It really is a healthy thing. It is healthy to say, Shirelle, you were being very insecure in that moment. Yeah. Shirelle, you were being very, very, insecure in that moment, or you were being very defensive in that moment, or you were being whatever assessment I have. If I don't do that self-reflection and that reset, I will keep showing up ineffective.
Absolutely.
Right? So it has benefited me.
Yes.
And I've seen it benefit other leaders, because the self-correction is much healthier and less damaging than if you have to do it outwardly.
Yeah. You have to be a big person for that. You have to be on a come up. Right. The big
that part.
You really do. And when you hear something about you that you may not like, right?
Yeah.
Sit with it. I just had a conversation yesterday with, and she'll probably, well, I won't, they may know if they see that, look at this. And they went in a room, they got invited into a room, and it made them a little uncomfortable because of some of the ways that they were, things that may have been said, that being approached, the approachability of it, and just how it was landing on them. And I told them, I encourage you to go take another peek in the room again. Grow a little bit with that, right? Go back in the room. Not everybody was like that.
Right.
Grow with yourself. Understand where that's coming from. Why is that even landing on you like that?
Right.
What's happening there?
Yeah.
And go make those other alliances in that room. Go back.
Yeah. And as you said two things, and I'm going to talk about my best friend, because those are our words all the time. Sit with that.
Yeah.
Right. Sit with that for a minute.
Yeah.
Because if you don't sit with it, you're going to perpetuate whatever it is, right? So give you a moment to sit with it and reflect on why it mattered to you. And so she always asked me these hard questions. Shirelle, why does that bother you? And I was like, I'm not in the mood for this right now. I just need you to listen.
I just want you to listen to me.
I just need you to listen. Right? But she holds me accountable.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? She holds me accountable. And she was like, I need you to answer the question. Why do you feel that way? Why did that bother you like that?
Yes.
And I was like, well, because it. And so I'll give you, this is the funniest one. She had told me about a situation at her job. And she said it was a younger employee. We're older than this person. And the person said something and called her out on something. And she felt like the younger person had threw it under the bus. And so she said, I was aggravated, like to the nth degree. And then she says, but I had to sit with it because really what it was is I was mad that she called me out because I already knew I had messed up. And she caught me before I could confess my failure.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh.
I like that, though. I think that's a level of self-awareness, too, right?
Yeah.
Because let's be real, we're human beings. This is not about being perfect anything.
No.
It's just about being better. Right.
That's it. And nobody said that you can't be flawed. Nobody said that you're going to be perfected at the moment.
That's right.
And this is what I was telling my students yesterday. If you don't become better as you transition through your career, that says something in and of itself. Like you said earlier, that whatever leader you were 15 years ago, you're not that leader 10 years, and you're not going to be that leader tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've taken everything, like I used to tell my team, I'm going to give you every tool that I can give you for you to be successful. What I'm not going to do, though, is I'm not going to tell you how to use them. You're going to have to use the experience because this time, this tool may have worked. The next time, that tool may not work.
That's right.
The other thing is it's always situational.
It's so situational. And the environments change.
Yeah. Right?
Yes.
And I can say that I've worked in government. I've worked in nonprofit. I've worked in nonprofit social services. I worked in very profitable nonprofit. I worked in government. And I will tell you, every culture is extremely different. And so my toolkit is still my toolkit.
Correct. But you sharpen some of the tools in it. And some of the tools may be a little bit outdated.
That part.
But
so you have to
this
take it
other
and re-engineer
part is
it.
Yeah, that's it. Re-engineering it, right? Absolutely. You know, I often would think sometimes, I'm like, I wish I could meet some of those people that I met like in my 20s and go back and say, I'm so sorry. I am not who I was.
Oh my God.
And I joke like that and say that, but I do want leaders to understand that it's okay.
Yeah. To be human.
Yeah.
To be human.
I mean, we're dealing life's for us too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. And so that would, in the last 5 minutes, if you had a magic wand with everything that we've talked about, if you had a magic wand and you had a leader, ineffective or both, what would you use the magic wand to do?
Oh, I think I would use the magic wand to help shape and scope vulnerability for people. And like be vulnerable to take the risk, be vulnerable. Because sometimes people see vulnerability as a weakness. I've heard people, I was in a class about a year ago, a class of people who are making a lot of money. And I put the word vulnerability up on there and I asked, tell me what this word meant. About 70% of that class of highly intellectual folk and leaders had something negative to say about vulnerability.
Really?
Yeah. Not all, but a majority. And we talked about that. Because the more vulnerable you can become and understanding how that can benefit and impact you, that's when that everything that we've been talking about today sort of starts to formulate and come into play.
It lands a little softer.
It does. And I have to tell you, it's a word that I deal with a lot too. And I know Brene Brown not plugging us yet, but her book deals with vulnerability a lot.
That's how she came out.
Yes.
She came out.
I have reread a lot of her books because that vulnerability piece is huge.
It is.
And the more I grow and learn, the more I'm able to be vulnerable. I have to tell you, the more doors that open for me.
Yes, yes.
And the more I'm able to be in experiences and situations that just help me grow tremendously.
Yeah. And then there's the respect that comes along with it, right? And then, like you said, I love it, the doors open. Because when you're not vulnerable, when you're not self-reflective, when you have left casualties along the way, the doors will continue to close. And even when they do open, they don't open with a lot of greatness.
Yes, yeah.
They open with a lot of chaos.
Yeah, they do. They do. So that would be my magic wand.
That would be your magic wand. Yes. Well, thank you for being here today. I have thoroughly enjoyed us talking. Woo! And I wanted to say to our guests, thank you very much for your time, your attention today. And thank you to Chantel again for just sharing her honesty and her transparency with us. And I think that's really what Kaleidoscope is about. It's really about us having truth conversations. Now, it may have sounded like we were all over the map or whatever, but there's a nugget that I'm sure that you've taken from this talk today. And I'm hoping that that nugget was a transformational opportunity for you or another leader that you may know, or one that you may be coaching, or one that you may even work with. So hopefully we've said something today to transform you. Remember, insight takes courage, and courage requires transformation.